to another edition of Breakthrough Chronicles. And I said early on when we started the show, the beauty of, this being my show, our show, is we get to invite the people that we want. And I love to invite my favorite people. And sitting to my right clearly is one of my very favorite people, Jay Parry, hanging out with us at the studios. It is so good to see you.
It's so great to be here with you. I'm excited about what you're doing.
Well, thank you very much. Well, what we're doing isn't nearly as exciting as what you have been doing. That's why you're here. So Chief Executive Officer, President, and I feel like over the last 10 or 12 years, it's just like fill in the blank because you're just big chief of big events.
Or I can't hold a job. One of the two. Okay, Ray. One of the two.
Well, I think you have certainly held down a job, no doubt about that. So the next big event is the Women's Final Four. But with the track record, you're talking about multiple Super Bowls now, Men's Final Four. And kind of fitting, I suppose, because on the heels of the most successful WNBA All-Star game in league history, I know you had to take special pride in that because of your previous affiliation and partnership with both the Mercury and the WNBA. Just talk about, you had to be kind of sitting on the sidelines for one of the first time in a while, beaming with some pride.
You know what? That's exactly what I felt like. I mean, I was first so excited when the Suns and Mercury said they were going to bring WNBA All-Star to Phoenix, right? We have just a great history with the WNBA and such great roots in basketball and support of basketball. But it's been a long time coming in terms of really getting the focus on women's sport, women's basketball, and of course the WNBA. So last weekend, when All-Star was here, it was so much fun for me because it was like old home week, right? Seeing all old Mercury players, coaches, WNBA colleagues. But it was just at this all-time high point. It was just such a pinnacle. And it was fabulous to just step into the arena and, as you said, kind of be able to watch it, right? Not be worried about the production because the Mercury and the WNBA really drove that. We had a small part providing some volunteers around town and at the airport as greeters and just really rolling out the red carpet for Arizona. But it was an incredible weekend. And it was just great to catch up with everybody and see how far we've come and just get really excited about the future. It made me really hopeful.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that hopeful is one key word that should be emphasized. And we've kind of saw it trending in that direction over the last couple of years, but certainly with the new rivalry in the league, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, the immense level of talent across the league, and now the exposure that comes as a result of it, it will be nothing but great dividends for the league and more importantly the fans.
Right. I mean, that's what's so great to see, right? The fan support, the corporate support, the nonprofits that get impacted. I mean, there's a lot of great impacts on Arizona when we host major events like a WNBA All-Star. I mean, the world's eyes were on us. The viewership was off the charts, right? It was something like a record of 1 million, and now we're up to 3 million viewers. And that's really meaningful progress and just a great jumping off point for, months and years to come.
Well, and on the heels of a pretty successful men's Final Four that you oversaw, and we'll get back to that in a moment. It's funny you talk about basketball and how it transcends, and not just basketball, sports in general, but basketball. We had Cheryl Miller, Hall of Famer, on as our last guest. And as I was preparing for our time together, it made me kind of sit and kind of reflect like what that beautiful orange sphere has done for so many of us. And I think for myself, without basketball, I would have never crossed paths with you. Your time running the Mercury as president and CEO, Ann Myers Drysdale, getting a chance to call games for Diana Taurasi. For you, I'm sure many of the same kind of feelings, thinking that as someone who was running marketing and sponsorships for Bank of America for 17 plus years, here you are now, you fast forward all these years later, and what the game of basketball and sports has been able to do for your career.
You know what? It was so serendipitous and so unexpected when I stepped from, as you said, the corporate world into sports. And I got a chance here in Phoenix to join the Phoenix Mercury, as you said. And that was because of two female leaders that were buying into the team with Jerry Colangelo at that time, back in 2003, 2004. Rick Welts was a big mentor at the Suns and brought me on. And I had no idea what I was stepping into, K Ray. I mean, in like some shocking and scary ways.
You're
But
like,
then,
wow.
exactly, what is this? What's going on? But also, just so many great things have happened. And it's all about the people, right? It is absolutely all about the people. And what I've said to so many is this basketball family is really, really incredibly special to me. I know it's special to you. It brought us all together, and and I think we were able to create something really special from that. Our early Mercury days, when you would always step in and say, "I will do whatever broadcast or whatever you need to promote the Mercury." I mean, I barely knew you. That meant so much to me because you were just a huge supporter early on, and there have been a lot of people like that that I think have changed the trajectory of the league, have lasted, really left a legacy. And I'm just proud to be associated with it. I feel so lucky in all of it.
Yeah, got a few championship rings as a
Well, that
result.
that was fun
That never
too.
hurts.
No.
You get to watch and observe a phenomenal career. Number three, Diana Taurasi, and what she has done, certainly for the Phoenix Mercury, the city, the league, just basketball
Right.
in general. I talk about Hall of Fame players, but I feel like I've been fortunate to be around Hall of Fame people.
Mhm.
Cheryl, Annie, DT, yourself. You talk about those people who have been so instrumental in making sure that the league continues to grow.
Mhm.
And this city, in large part, has also been a part of not just the growth of that, but all of these big events as we kind of
Yeah.
move over to now what you're doing. So 17 years at Bank of America. What was your role then, and what was your first kind of taste of a big sporting event that maybe whets your appetite for what the future might hold for you?
Sure. I think when I was at Bank of America, and especially here in Arizona, I oversaw marketing and kind of customer relations and research and sponsorships and just a lot of things that were public facing. And so early on, when the Mercury first started in 1997, Bank of America was an early sponsor of the Mercury. And so watching, and that was kind of going out on a limb, if you will, right, for this fledgling league.
Sure.
And so watching Cheryl Miller as the head coach, I mean, all those memories. At one point, Cheryl Miller was carrying around the CEO of Bank of America on the court there at America West Arena, Kathy Monroe, who's like as big around as this, and Cheryl's literally carrying her around the court. So those are just memories that we will never
Right.
forget. But I mean, I grew up in a sports family. Our dad took us to every sporting event in Southern California, whether we wanted to go or not. And so whether it was football or baseball or hockey or a Rose Bowl or a USC football game, I mean, we went to all of it. The rodeo, the golf tournament, Torrey Pines. I mean, K Ray, it was nonstop. And so we got exposed to a lot of sports, and it was really part of our family DNA. I have so many great memories of going to those sporting events with my dad. So sports has always been a part of my life.
Right. Well, and who knew all those times as a young girl, a young woman, that you were maybe taking and processing notes that
Yeah.
little did you know you would be utilizing 15, 20, 30 years down the road.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, it was really interesting to make the leap from the Suns and Mercury into working on the Super Bowl here that we hosted in 2015 in Arizona. It was Super Bowl 49. And it was, again, one of those things I didn't know what I was stepping into. It's a major undertaking, a statewide initiative. And just based on our relationships in Arizona, because we're such a collaborative and kind of open community and I think a really dynamic community, everyone pulled together and made that Super Bowl, which was the first major event I worked on, a huge success. And that gave me a taste of it.
Well, and look, let's be honest, that's a coveted position. So take us through that process. Like how did that come about? And if you can share with us that moment that you got that phone call or that meeting that says, by the way, you're going to be in charge of Super Bowl 49.
It was an interesting process. I was introduced to David Rousseau, who's the president of SRP, right, one of our power companies here, and he had just been named as the chair of the board for Super Bowl 49. And he worked in concert with Michael Bidwell, who's really the host team, who's really the driving force behind getting the Super Bowl to come here in 2015. So between the two of them, and then Mike Kennedy, who was just a huge supporter of this state and mine personally. I met him through the Thunderbirds, and he was just always a great friend. And so Mike Kennedy was kind of handing over the reins to David Rousseau, and I met with the three of them. And again, I didn't know where it was going to go, Kevin.
Right.
I was like, oh, I'll just, kind of see what happens here.
Sure.
I don't know. And when I got the call, it was really exciting. And I can remember Mike Kennedy saying to me, failure is not an option. Like, don't screw this up, Jay. It's like, okay, tell me what you really think, right? Like, put the pressure on. But there was just a ton of support, right, from the public sector, the private sector, to really put Arizona on the global stage back in 2015. And I think that event really kind of lent itself to this business and kind of forward progress that's been happening in Arizona, the past, 10 years. I mean, we're in a growth mode.
Right.
And these major events really support that propelling us forward.
I feel pretty good about myself if I can host a party for like 8 to 10 people, get a party tray, some beverages. You're hosting parties with hundreds of thousands, with millions watching. I mean, where do you even begin to, I guess, start the structure? And certainly you have, you can go back to the previous committees where the cities were held. But I mean, I think about the phrase Herculean task. It had to feel like a Herculean task because you'd been in the sports space, but nothing to this magnitude.
Right. I mean, it was daunting, I will tell you. And at the same time, what you do, just like what you do every day, you take a step back, you figure out like, what are the bite-sized pieces? What do we do first? What do we do second? Like put one foot in front of the next and
Right.
you just start moving forward. And it's about having a great team, right? It's a great staff team. It's a great board team. It's a great community team. And I think that's what kind of sets Arizona apart. Because, I said we are really collaborative, right? We want to raise the bar. We always want to be thinking about how can we do it better? How can we be the best? I mean, that we spent a lot of time thinking and talking about that when I was with the Phoenix Mercury.
Right.
How do we do things for the first time? I mean, we did the first jersey sponsorship of a WNBA or an NBA team here in Arizona with the Mercury. I mean, it was kind of record breaking at the time.
Right.
And so that's, I think, how we think about it here in Arizona, because we are kind of a young community. And so it's just creating that team and getting everybody going the same direction, and really kind of charting the course. And, it's one of those things you look back on it, you go, I wonder how we did that. But it worked out. And now we've got a really good roadmap for these other major events, right? In 2015, we had Super Bowl. 2016, we have the college football playoff. 2017, our first men's Final Four, which was a big success. And those successes set us up for getting it again. And that's always the goal. How do we make sure the NFL wants to come back and do another Super Bowl, et cetera, et cetera?
As you said, 10 plus years. And I'm sure in some ways it feels like you've been living it in dog years. The way these events can, you're like, oh, we have, 475 days. And then all of a sudden you look like, oh, we have 5 days.
The countdown clock at the airport freaks everybody out, Kevin. I mean, literally, we get off a plane and we go, oh my God, we're under stress.
But it's funny. I went back and I was reading a couple of the stories when you first were appointed for that Super Bowl 49. And you mentioned about trying to make improvements. And now, obviously, I travel a fair amount. I don't always get to the cities that are hosting these big events. But I do recall one of the first times being in Sky Harbor and seeing the signage, seeing the clock, and thinking, wow, I mean, this is a welcome to everyone.
Yeah.
And it really does kind of put in, front and center somebody who's maybe not even a sports fan, like,
Mhm.
oh, wow, Arizona's hosting XYZ.
Mhm.
And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't your group the first to kind of do that, where you started, like, you extended your marketing and your branding all the way to the airport?
Yeah, we did. And part of that was because we did go to the Super Bowl the year before in New York. We like to refer to as Snowmageddon, because it was one of the coldest, Januaries or
Those folks are
Februaries
still
in
trying
history.
to trying to live that one down, but
Exactly. So we stepped off the plane in New York, and I mean, it was just like any other day. You didn't know you were coming to Super Bowl. And so we thought it was really important to have a really warm Arizona welcome wherever you're coming from. And as you said, really kind of set that tone months in advance. It's not about the weekend of the game. I mean, it is, but that lead up is really important. And we also think we want to make sure there's benefit for our local residents here in Arizona. I mean, a lot of what we focus on is, of course, hosting a great game and a great event that weekend, but how do we leave a lasting legacy in Arizona and a stronger community than before a Super Bowl or before a Final Four? And creating that pride in our residents and give them things that, they wouldn't ordinarily have exposure to.
I know a lot of people see you in your position with the event, and they'll see the promotional shots on social media. You're doing ribbon cuttings, you're out, and they see all the bright, shiny bling and the fun of it. But
Oh my gosh.
there is another side to it as well, that you have to constantly be on. I don't want to say alert, but you're having to kind of navigate political waters. There are things that have come up through these 10 plus years that,
Mhm.
you know, have hit your desk and was something that was not on the planning sheet for that week or that month.
Absolutely.
How have you learned, and maybe who helped you best prepare to deal with these things? Because these are the kind of things that can derail an event and a project real quickly.
Right. That's a really good point. I mean, the whole kind of political and kind of legislative oversight and interest in these major events is significant. And coming from corporate America, coming from the Phoenix Suns and the Phoenix Mercury, I mean, that wasn't something I had a lot of experience with, frankly. I mean, I had like corporate politics, but not real politics.
Right.
And so I would say, just understanding what your strong suits are and, the experience that I have, and then being able to draw on people. And so I really go back to, the David Rousseaus on the board, the Mike Kennedys, who's just been in Arizona so long as a major force, Michael Bidwell, had really good relationships with our city mayors, right? Whether it was Greg Stanton back in 2015 for Super Bowl
Right.
or Mayor Kate Gallego for this past Super Bowl and Final Four. The governors have always been really supportive, right? Jan Brewer, Doug Ducey, now Katie Hobbs. And so just creating those relationships and I think, trying to create this, we're on the same team for Arizona. And in a way, it doesn't really matter like what your politics are or, what kind of business you're in or what your religious beliefs are. It's like this is about lifting up Arizona. That's what I love about sport, K-Ray, right? It just brings us together. It
Right.
unifies us. And so that's the part that I think so great for Arizona. I get excited about the impacts that can have.
Yeah, and it really has obviously become a little bit easier with each successful event that you're able to pull off.
Hmm.
Um, but there are constantly those, detractors, and let's face it, there's going to be detractors for everything. But there is a mechanism that goes into pulling off these kind of events, because it does require money, fundraising, and you have to be able to, in the eyes of many, justify the expense.
Hmm.
And that's another challenge that you've got to deal with over the course of a year or 2 years as you prepare for each one of these events.
Right. And I think back to my experience with Super Bowl 49 in 2015, and the raise for to host that event was about 25 million, which today doesn't sound like that much. It
Right.
was monumental back in 2015. And so we really thought about it, and there were some detractors and there were some people that said, you're never going to be able to do that. You can't pull that off.
Right.
Well, for me, that's like, yes, we can.
Right.
And we will show you
Watch
how.
me.
Exactly. We will prove you wrong, and we will, even exceed that. And so I think it's just a challenge, right? Like, how do you get people on the team, and how do you show them all these amazing benefits of these major events? Because it's not well known. As you said, there's always a lot of what looks like glitz and glamour, but frankly, it's like 5% glitz and glamour and 95% really hard work. And you want to get people on your team that are up for that.
Right.
Like, hey, do you want to do this for the next 24 months, and then it's going to be over, and then you're going to go find another job, right? And I've had amazing people that have worked with me, and that's what makes this so fun.
I think back, since you mentioned those people, I think back from our days in the Mercury together, and too many names to mention, but I know going back to those days of the Mercury, you have leaned into and welcomed those people as part of your team. And it's one of the things that I try to communicate to my own kids and to the younger audiences, like, be a willing listener, be a hard worker, and you don't know where that will take you, not necessarily now, but in 5 to 10 years. But just talk about the keys of the success from those people that have been able to help the success of this.
I mean, on the Final Four of a staff of maybe 15, 16 full-time people, I had probably 5 or 6 from my Sons and Mercury days.
Right.
And even with something like, we did a program for third graders around the Final Four that was a reading competition, Read to the Final Four. We had over 15,000 third graders reading around the state for the months leading up to the Final Four. It was earlier this year. Seems like about 10 years ago.
Right.
But I send a message to Diana Taurasi and Penny Taylor. And I'm like, hey, would you guys come to our kickoff event, our tip-off event, and be guest readers? Wham, whatever you need, we are there for you. And, I know that reading and kids are important to Diana and Penny, right? So it was a nice intersection with something that they believe in.
Right.
But they were just there for us. Annie Myers Drysdale, another one. We have our tip-off luncheon with all of our partners. The NCAA Men's Basketball Committee is in. Text message, Annie, would you come and be our MC? Bam, whatever you need.
Right.
And those people just make this, just really, really special. And again, I just say again and again, I'm so grateful. I feel so lucky. And, hopefully they look at me and say, oh, we could call on Jay for whatever we need to.
Right.
I've gotten a few ticket calls, let me just say. Could
one-
we get
one or
tickets
two?
to fill in the blank?
Yeah, exactly. Fill in the blank. But you go back to that reading program, and those are, and understandably so, those aren't big headline makers because they don't have to do specifically with the event, with the teams, with the individuals. But those are the programs that really become the roots of future programs, right? And the impact on those young kids. And what are some of the other additional programs that now in the 10 plus years that you've been able to see successfully launched and grow on those? And I'm guessing that other cities who have played the role of host have like, oh, we want to take that one back to our place.
Right. Well, the reading program was amazing. And so we're going to continue that this fall. And then we're going to take it into when we host Women's Final Four in 2026. And we've gotten just such great feedback on it from teachers, from principals, from district administrators. And you go, oh gosh, this is really working. Like, this is really helping. Reading at a third grade level is one of the most important things to their future success. So kind of how do we lean into that and make it work for Arizona? Again, on kind of the philanthropic angle, we always do some sort of renovation around a basketball court or a football field. And for the men's Final Four, we were over at East Lake, right over on Washington in Central Phoenix, and completely redid their indoor gym, their outdoor basketball court, put up this 100-foot mural with all of kind of the founders of the park at East Lake. And I mean, it's a beautiful facility. Over 20,000 people and kids go through that every year. And now they have a constant reminder of, oh my gosh, we hosted men's Final Four, which was amazing, but this is going to just carry on for years to come. And that's all. So a lot on the philanthropic angle. The other thing we do, K-Ray, is we really focus on business growth and economic development.
Okay.
And so we take a Super Bowl or a men's Final Four, a women's Final Four. We work with the Arizona Commerce Authority, economic stewards around the state, the governor, and we invite companies from outside Arizona to come to the event. It's kind of a bucket list, right? You get an invitation to Super Bowl in Arizona in February, and a CEO or a senior
Let's see,
executive.
am I doing anything in Upper New York? No, I see.
I'm available. And then we spend 4 days with them on a curated agenda of here's Arizona, here's the business community, here's the educational system, this is where you're going to get your workforce, et cetera, et cetera. We've had tremendous success of then growing our economy and our business, kind of landscape through the programs too.
And I'm sure it goes back to, again, you talk about that raise, 2015, 25 million. It becomes a little easier now to justify in terms of like, okay, this is our track record. This is the impact that we've been able to make. And my goodness, the ripple effect, we're talking well beyond 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and the growth.
Absolutely. I mean, with this Super Bowl in 2023, the raise was about $50 million to host the event. And the economic impact was measured as $1.3 billion to the state of Arizona.
Wow.
And that's gross economic impact. And that's over 700 in GDP to the state of Arizona, 700 million, GDP. So it's like, as you said, super strong proof points that this works to accelerate our growth. And the other thing is, it's a global commercial for Arizona. Right? I mean, we look so good in February for Super Bowl. We look so good for Final Four in April. I mean, it's where you want to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there was 73,000 plus who were in that stadium.
Yeah.
Which is mind-blowing in of itself. I believe you rolled out a new event this year, Fan Jam. So what was the brainchild of that? Where did that come from? And I'm sure that there's always this sense of like wanting to make it bigger and better the next one, but there's probably a balance that you've got to strike in there, right? So what is the vetting process that you guys go through with your committee in terms of the ideal list? You start it all with a big whiteboard and just kind of a process of elimination?
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what happens, because the great thing about these events is there's so much interest. People have a lot of ideas of what we should do. There's a lot of incoming.
The suggestion box is
just
full.
It's jammed full. And so part of it is kind of navigating through all that. But seriously, we do start with a whiteboard, and we take into account what do Arizona stakeholders think is important right now. So the consistent themes, and then it kind of leads us to what we actually end up activating. Education is still really important to the state. And just how do we get our kids involved? How do we make our future stronger for our kids? So education is important, kind of DE&I. And so we have a whole program around how do we have diverse suppliers from Arizona that get exposed to major events, get contracts with major events. So we don't have, the governing bodies bringing folks from Los Angeles to, create everything, or New York to create everything. How do we use Arizona businesses? So that DE&I piece. And then the third one is really around around sustainability. That's just a really important focus for businesses and elected officials here. So we look at how can we be the most sustainable, the most green Super Bowl in history. And then you kind of work down your list from that. And for us, we wanted these events to be statewide. So in the case of Fan Jam, which you brought up, it's like we can bring the men's Final Four around the state with Fan Jam. It was a pop-up activation, basketball hoops, reading corners, height jump, just kind of drills and skills around basketball. And so it was up in Flagstaff, it was down in Tucson, it was across the valley, and it was just a way for our residents to be a part of men's Final Four.
Yeah, and that's what I found really intriguing is because let's be honest, not everybody has the means to be a part of the Final Four, whether it's a ticket or even just traveling to come down, but to really plug in that statewide
Yeah.
pride. Yes, it's taking place in Phoenix and Glendale, but to give people in the Four Corners, to give people down in Tucson this feeling like, oh yeah, I took part in the men's Final Four, and
Mhm.
yeah, I'm planning to take part in the women's Final Four in a couple of years.
Yeah, yeah. And we there's a way that these major events can really have something for everyone because we have obviously rabid sports fans, rabid basketball fans,
Right.
rabid football fans, but we also want to make sure that there's entertainment options for the family and that there are a lot of free things that families can do. And so in the case of men's Final Four, there was a free concert series at Hance Park for 3 nights. For Super Bowl, we had the first ever viewing party on Super Bowl Sunday, and that was free. We had 3 days of lead up, really great entertainment, musical acts, etc. So we do want to kind of show it's sports, it's entertainment, it's culinary, right? We're all into our food and our drink, right?
Right.
And so we always kind of infuse that and try to have an Arizona spin on it.
So you've got a little time now. You crossed one off your list with the men's Final Four. You've got a little window before the women's Final Four comes to Phoenix. Take us through now this timeline. Again, you're a veteran of this. Take us through your timeline of kind of what you're checking the boxes for and leading up to, and I assume you almost have like a scouting group that
Yep.
goes out and attends these
Exactly.
other events because and is it just because you're focused on the women's Final Four? Do you specifically target just college events, or will you be attending all the other big events to try to pluck a little bit of information and details from those?
Yeah, both. And so, I mean, the women's Final Four is a big undertaking, and our goal is to make this the best women's Final Four ever. So we set our bar high,
Right.
and we'll spend the next 18 months planning. Just had the NCAA out yesterday for site visits already, so spent some time around the valley and here in our downtown footprint. Just showing them here's what we have to offer and kind of here's what's new. There's always something new in Arizona to show and tell. And they were super impressed with the arena and all the enhancements that have been done there and just the size of our convention center. So we'll focus on our women's Final Four plan, but we're looking at the schedule for 2025 through about really the next 10 years, 2035. And so how do we line up events that are going to really, again, create this positive impact on Arizona? So we just came off a WNBA All-Star. We'll go into Women's Final Four. In 2027 will be the NBA All-Star hosted here in Arizona. And so we're looking at what other, NFL, NCAA, other governing bodies, what events can we attract to Arizona? And that is a very active process right now.
Going back to a couple of people that you'd mentioned being, key people in your life in terms of opening up the sports world, Jerry Colangelo, Rick Welts. I'm sure for you, it has to have been exciting to see a guy like Matt Ishbia come in, take over ownership of the Suns and the Mercury, and you mentioned the new facilities down the street, and just how, I guess, exciting it is for you to know you've got an individual like that here in the backyard, a guy who is not afraid of big events and big moments.
And likes to move fast.
Yes,
I
very
love that.
fast.
Let's go. Let's do this. It's been really, really fun to see what Matt and his ownership group and his new management team have brought to the Valley. And we're excited about, they were really incredibly supportive of the men's Final Four.
Hmm.
The first time I met Josh Bartelstein, he actually told me he played in a men's Final Four. I need to do a little better homework. And so that was just a great connection for me. Obviously, Matt was also in a men's Final Four. So they get it and they believe in our basketball for Arizona, but they also think bigger, right? And they want to lock arms with us and figure out what other events, whether it's sports or entertainment, can we bring to the state. So I'm really excited just about their energy and their commitment and their investment level, because it's increasingly competitive to get these major events, right? I mean, a lot of cities have kind of woken up
Right.
to these
To the
opportunities.
possibilities.
Exactly, to the
Yeah.
possibilities. And even here in the West, Los Angeles has become a real contender with everything they're hosting. Las Vegas is now, in the rotation. And so we need to continue to invest as leaders in Arizona and make sure we're putting our best foot forward in our facilities, in our hotels and restaurants, in our infrastructure. I mean, I love it when the article comes out in the Wall Street Journal that Phoenix Sky Harbor is voted the best airport, right? I mean, that is great for all these major events.
Right.
And that's a commitment that the city of Phoenix has made. And I applaud them for that, because all those proof points are really important to what we have to offer.
What were the aspirations of 17-year-old Jay Parry?
Just to get a job, just to be able to take care of myself, have some revenue generating activities is what I always referred to it as. I was always really intrigued by business. I like business, and I wasn't really aware that sports and business, kind of there was a big intersection there. And so just early on, I went to the business school at the University of Colorado.
Proud Buff alum.
Proud Buff, exactly. I mean, it's getting kind of interesting over in Buff country right now.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Hope springs eternal for this football season again. And our basketball programs, both men and women's, have really come up nicely. Anyway, so I ended up in the business school there. And then my dad said, go to University of Colorado, meet some nice people, and learn how to ski. It's like, okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
So I took skiing PE when I got there, got a couple credits for that. But anyway, I was just always interested in business. And so just this idea of, being in corporate America, I got a great foundation at Bank of America. I mean, I was exposed to so many things in this, Fortune 100 company, and met a lot of great people and learned so much in that experience. And then just the ability to apply that to sports and bring, my business acumen to the Phoenix Mercury and then get transferred over to the Suns. It's been a really fun ride.
I think for all of us as we get older,
we are.
I mean,
no,
I know,
we're not.
I know. I keep, as I tell people, I keep trying to give Father Time the stiff arm, but
I think I'm the same age as Diana Taurasi now. She was drafted the same. We drafted her the same year I came to the Mercury, and I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like we both came out of college.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Speaking of the Fountain of Youth, 42-year-old boy for another Olympic gold.
Amazing.
But I think we all find ourselves oftentimes as we get older, going through work, through life, we forget about the energies, the excitements, the passion, the outlook that we had as that 17 and 19-year-old. Do you find yourself kind of having that voice in the job that you're doing now in the space? Have you allowed yourself to kind of keep that voice, to keep that passion?
I think absolutely. And the other thing is, as we mature and we become veterans in this business, K-Ray, it's all about who's on our team, right? And I mean, these sports events, the sports business, I mean, you got to have energy. You got to be dynamic. I mean, it is kind of a young person's game.
Right.
And so I also surround myself with, great interns, kids just coming out of college, because they bring such great perspective, right? And there's always something to be learned. Like, we don't know everything. And some people look at us like, well, yeah, you must know everything. I'm like, absolutely not. We have so much to learn. And so I think keeping that energy high and that passion, I mean, for me, it just kind of comes naturally. I get excited about it. So,
Right.
and we love the adrenaline rush. That's what sports is about. And these events are absolutely, built on adrenaline.
Well, and it's not wins in sense of one loss with a record, but the wins come in different ways,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And and just kind of getting people, like, whether you're at a fan fest or you're at one of the renovated courts, or we took one of our 16-foot high basketball cactus hoops. That was a first that we
Which
did here in Arizona.
those are fantastic, by
They,
the way.
they were so cool. Anyway, we took one out to the Maryvale City Community Center, and these kids were looking at this like, oh my God. They were this tall, and
Right.
it was, 4 times their size. And they're going to walk in and out of that every day, and they're just going to be attracted to, this is really cool, and this is basketball, and this is why I should be active. And, just the role that sports plays in kids' lives and in our adult lives. I mean, it's a difference maker.
Yeah, and you mentioned taking the show on the road, if you will. You look at Arizona and the number of collegiate institutions we have
Yeah.
in the state,
Yeah.
Division One AA. What would you tell? What advice would you give, and not just to those kids, but anybody ages 18 to 24, 25? What advice would you give them um, to try and be a part of these events in the future? Like if they see Jay Parry and say, I want to be Jay Parry someday,
Mm-hmm.
what advice would you give them?
Yeah, buckle up. It's going to be exciting. I would say, I mean, I was just reading something in one of the newsletters I get about Mahomes, right? And the success he's had in Kansas City. And what he was talking about is just, he's a grinder, is what this article said. And he's like, I live on Grinder Island. Like, I am so focused on how can we be the best? How can we be a three-peat, in the NFL and a Super Bowl world? And I think that's kind of how I've approached my career. Like, I mean, I just work hard, right? I just grind on like, how are we going to get this done and how are we going to be the best ever? And so for, kids graduating from college, I mean, go to college because it's just a great experience. And then be willing to kind of roll up your sleeves and do anything, right? Work hard and be curious. Like, think about the sports business, think about kind of the role that you could play, how you could add value. And then also just take your relationships, take care of your relationships. You kind of touched on that when we started. Nobody really ever said that to me. So it kind of took me a while to figure it out.
Right.
But those, the relationships that we have in business and in life, that's ultimately what it's all about.
Hardest part of your job, best part of
Mm.
your job.
The hardest part is that there is a lot of interest and that it's, all fairly public. And so there's a lot of input and a lot of ideas about how we should do things.
Right.
And so we need to kind of sift through that and really cull down to, here are the 5 big things we should do. And so just going through that process and involving stakeholders and letting people have a voice in things that, want to impact Arizona in a positive way, but ultimately ending up with a game plan and then executing that game plan. So just that discipline associated with that is a challenge, and it's exciting, but it's challenging. The best part is I just get to meet all these great people and feel like we're making a difference for our state. I'm just optimistic about Arizona and everything we have to offer. I moved here from California, and it was just such a welcoming business environment. Feels like everybody's from somewhere else.
Right.
And so it's open, and I really appreciated that. And I felt like I can find a place here. I can make an impact here. And I feel like, that's kind of what I've tried to do in my little way.
So in this 10, 11-year run now, all these big events, getting ready for another one in a couple of years, when do you get to kind of go, when do you get to drop the shoulders and relax and maybe celebrate and enjoy the success that most recently was the men's Final Four?
There's I guess I don't know that I feel like we can just take a complete step back.
Right.
Because, with whatever you're dedicated to and you're putting, all of yourself into it, other things get put on hold. But eventually you'll get back to a long vacation. Or as I've said, my friends are like, "Are you ever going to return our text messages?" My family's like, "We'll see you when it's over." But there is always, I've got a little bit of a tradition now that just a few days after the event is over, I have a little celebratory dinner with family and friends at Steak 44. So that's
Oh,
kind of like a big,
okay.
that's like a big sigh of relief
Right.
and a really fun, special occasion
Well, and
to mark the event.
fittingly.
Yeah.
All right, final segment here. One of the things that we like to do with our guests is we call it the Pay It Forward segment because we are big believers in doing that here on Breakthrough Chronicles. And what we like to do is afford our guests an opportunity to talk about, promote charities or initiatives that they're a part of, that they're passionate about. So is there anything that you would like the listening and viewing
Oh my
viewing
gosh,
audience
that's
to
exciting.
know about?
That's exciting. What I would say is, specifically about the women's Final Four, we are always looking for great volunteers. And we've had thousands of volunteers for Super Bowl, thousands of volunteers for the men's Final Four. I mentioned the WNBA also are volunteers. And so we love people that have this love of Arizona to be on our team. And so as we get ramped up for the women's Final Four, I would just invite those of you that have a passion for sport and for our community of Arizona to get involved and to volunteer. So that's one. And you just never know what you're going to do when you're a volunteer. Whether you're out at the
Sure.
airport or you're out at the stadium or you're over at the arena or at Hance Park. You get to do some pretty fun stuff. So first I would say volunteer. And that's also something that I say to students, just to get back to that last question. There's so many ways to learn about sport and business through volunteerism. So I think the sky's the limit when you kind of want to broaden your horizons. And then for me, I just believe in anything that's kind of student focused. And I'm a big believer in women, Kay Ray. This probably comes as a surprise to you. And so we're going to be creating some specifically women and girl programs associated with the women's Final Four. So I would just say stay tuned on that.
Okay, stay tuned. Get those details right here on Breakthrough Chronicles and, of course, with our partners, PHNX Sports. President, CEO, ... big game, big event boss. I think it's safe to say that, yeah, you're employed, as you said, for the next couple of years. I don't think we're going to see Jay standing at the airport. We'll host big events for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Help wanted or wanted help. Yeah. Either one of the two.
Thank you so much for stopping by. Great to see you. Best of luck. I know that we will run our paths will cross many times between now and 2026. So all the best to you and the group.
You know what? Thank you so much, Kay Ray. And again, I just go back to, I love sitting here with you. And I just love your support in every way of Arizona and everything I've always worked on. So thank you. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Jay Parry, find her at a big game event coming to your neighborhood soon.